If you feel you have what it takes to be awarded as the best in the business, here is your chance to apply. Head on over to our website, download the form and apply. If you face any troubles when applying or feel the need to get in touch with us directly, email us, call us, tweet at me directly at Sunanda_J or join our Facebook group.
Hello and welcome to Leaders of Tomorrow, 18-hour special initiative that celebrates the undying entrepreneurial spirit of micro, small and medium enterprises. This is the only daily MSME platform in the country, a show where you can voice your concerns and get answers to all your queries directly from our team of experts. We understand the issues that you, the MSME entrepreneur, face, and this show aims to bring you the most relevant and updated information on everything related to your businesses. We are talking about CSR and how you, the entrepreneur, can ensure that you're involved more in the societies and communities that you're involved in. And to discuss that, I'm being joined by Mohandas Pai from Bangalore. He is, of course, the chairman of Manipal Global Education. We also have Pranav Haldia, the MD of Prime Database. And in studio, I have with me Yogita Mutta. She's the co-founder of the Violet Box. Mohandas Pai, Pranav Haldia, Yogita, thank you all very much for joining us on this special panel where we're talking about CSR, we're talking about giving and how corporates and startups and entrepreneurs can really participate in this. And maybe I'd like to start with you, Pranav. According to a report that you've put out, you're suggesting a 28% increase year on year in terms of the CSR outlay which has been done by India Inc. Let's start there and talk about whether this is indicating that this mandatory CSR of 2% for a certain category of India Inc. really seems to be working.
I would like to start by saying that, I'm not really a big fan of mandatory CSR spend. I think CSR should remain a voluntary activity, and corporates which deem fit should be free to spend in CSR as per their wishes. Why I say so is because whenever anything is made mandatory, it does lead to a lot of misuse, a lot of things being done which are not in the original ambit of the law itself. In fact, I'd like to give another example of a recent mandate on similar lines, which was when SEBI also mandated companies to have a woman on the board, and how we saw a lot of companies complying by getting their wives, daughters, relatives on the board.
Okay. Mr. Pai, let me bring you in at this point. You're very closely associated with Infosys for a long period of time, and Infosys, of course, one of the outspoken companies when it comes to associating more with society, when it comes to giving back to society. On what side of the argument are you? Pranav is saying mandatory CSR doesn't really work. What would you have to say?
Look, I'm not for mandatory CSR because I don't like the force of law to do philanthropy. But be it what it may, the law is very clear now, and we have it's 2%. So I think companies are putting it out, but many of them are just putting out the data. They're collecting the data of everything they do and putting it out. So I really don't know how much of that is actually going to the ground, what is the impact. We need 2 or 3 years of data and monitoring to find out what is happening. My view is that companies should invest in the local communities where they are situated. They must invest in making sure that the local people have a stake in them and take care of some needs like health, education, etc. They should also make sure they generate jobs in the local area where they are, because the stakeholders essentially for every plant or every location have to be local. Apart from that, they have to invest something for the larger part of the country. But the big thing I find which is transformational is that corporates will build capacity either in NGOs or in their own teams for social impact.
Making an interesting point about NGOs, I'll come back to that and talk about how companies can work with NGOs, but I want to bring in Yogita at this point. You represent the Violet, you've set up the Violet, and yes, you ensure that every pie and every penny that you earn at the Violet, you're using a percentage of that or a portion of that really to give back to society. Maybe we can start by talking about what you're doing at the Violet.
Sure. So Violet, we have this beautiful luxury box where we give all gourmet teas, coffees, chocolates, grooming essentials, and women also have a choice to add their choice of sanitary supplies to the box. And against each box that we sell, we donate sanitary essentials to girls in need. Okay. So at a startup stage, Violet is not doing this as a part of a CSR activity. It's doing this as a part of its business model. So it is an inherent part of a business model to do CSR when we are also connecting all the luxuries, we're giving the luxuries to the elite and helping someone in need.
Sure. But Yogita, we don't see a lot of entrepreneurs doing this.
Yes.
One reason could possibly be, and I'm hazarding a guess here, that it's
Yeah.
not mandated as far as, say, MSMEs or
Not at
entrepreneurs are
all.
concerned.
Yeah.
So where did the germ of the idea, how did you all convince yourselves, maybe convince investors, if any, that this
Yeah.
was going to be an integral part of your business model?
So when I was at the London School of Economics, I had observed that how the European society, the American society were free in adopting any conversation regarding women hygiene, periods, and all this whole topic. But back in India, it was very awkward. Saying sanitary napkins in public was like saying Voldemort in Hogwarts. So yeah, that's where the idea came up, and I came across a BBC report which said that 70% of women in our country cannot afford sanitary napkins.
Mr. Pai, I want to pick up on something that Yogita just said in terms of, CSR not just being CSR, but being an integral part of what the business itself does. According to reports, and I want to go back to also a report that Prime Database has done and just read out some statistics we have. The Prime Minister's National Relief Fund, along with other funds which have been set up by the central as well as the state governments, have seen the biggest jump when it comes to CSR contributions, nearly 418%. So the kind of increase that we're talking about year on year of CSR, do you think this is being led primarily by the government and it's not so much a voluntary act on the part of India Inc.?
Look, it takes time for people who are not used to social spending to create a structure, identify NGOs, give them money. You can't throw away money. So the easiest thing to do if you can't spend is to give it to the Prime Minister's Relief Fund as such as a fund where it will sit there and be distributed as and when the states require it. That's a very different methodology, right? The companies have to show activity, they have to show outflow, and this may be easy. So I think they're trying it out. So we should not read too much into it and just see it as some kind of interim arrangement. And maybe companies want to be seen as being good to the government, good to social causes, and say we contributed to the national fund. This is our CSR. I mean, it's fine. The key thing is, are they spending 2% of pre-tax profits on CSR activities? Where are they spending? What is the impact? I think that's what we need to do. Sunanda, you know that in Akshaya Patra, for the last 17 years, we have gone up from 1,500 children to 1.5 million children every single day, giving them a hot, unlimited midday meal in 12,000 schools across 11 states. And we just crossed 2 billion meals in 17 years. Now, we follow the corporate approach of hygiene, of food standards, of delivery, of logistics, of cooking, of technology, monitoring, financial reporting, everything else. That's the way we are brought up, right? And that's created this hugely scalable, hugely successful model, which has worked very well and is recognized the biggest midday meal program in the world. And that's why I think we need much more professionalization in the NGOs. We need better management techniques. We need scalability because they are the execution engines. And working with corporates, I think, will build that. To me, that will be the biggest spin-off from all this activity.
Okay, fair point. And in fact, let's talk about NGOs. Pranav, one way of CSR, of course, is for companies to directly involve themselves with the societies and the local societies that they work in. Another, and a lot of companies do that, is to tie up with NGOs. But the criticism also is that these not-for-profits are perhaps not very transparent. Talk to our viewers about what should be some of the do's and don'ts that not-for-profits should keep in mind when it comes to associating with corporate, and also what the corporates, entrepreneurs, MSME should keep in mind when they're associating with a not-for-profit when it comes to CSR.
There is no monitoring procedure which has been established to look at how and where the companies are spending. As per our analysis, in the previous year, total 8,345 crores was spent, which is a huge amount, but there is no monitoring whatsoever in terms of where this money is being spent. Is it just being given to friends and relatives? Are there a lot of kickbacks which are involved? Because like various other aspects relating to corporate governance, this boils down also to the DNA of the promoter. And if a person genuinely wants to do a CSR, then he would have been doing it with or without this rule coming into effect 2 years back. And for people who don't want to do CSR, then they would also figure out ways and means of ensuring that the money is, given to friends or relatives, or there are kickbacks, or another thing which has been seen in a lot of companies is that they've spent in obviously their catchment areas, So wherever their plants are, wherever their offices are, or in terms of developing skills which are of direct benefit to their enterprise. So let's say if I'm a software company, then I would give training to on computer education to individuals. So I think monitoring of the spends which are being made under CSR becomes very critical. Coming back to what you were saying in terms of what should NGOs look for in companies and vice versa, I think as far as companies are concerned, a proper due diligence needs to be done on what are the activities being entailed, what really are the spends going towards. And on the other side, I think as far as NGOs are concerned, they need to look at, is the company genuinely looking at good CSR, or is it just a, checkbox sort of compliance which the company is looking for?
Fair points, Pranav. Let's in fact take a very quick break at this point. But on the other side, we're going to talk about what lessons Indian entrepreneurs and MSMEs can learn from their global peers. Do stay tuned. Welcome back. You're with us here on the Leaders of Tomorrow, and we're talking about CSR and how you, the entrepreneur, can ensure that you're incorporating CSR more and more into your businesses. Yogita, just before we took the break,
Yes.
We were talking about, and you in fact brought it up, about, when you were studying the LSE, how you saw, and the kind of models that were essentially being followed in CSR. Let's talk about what lessons we can possibly learn, and whether you think that Indians and Indian entrepreneurs are as giving and as open to CSR as the global peers.
So complete transparency is very important when you're doing any kind of CSR activity. And also now when you ask about Indians participating and contributing to it, Diwali, it's Diwali time right now. So we are making sure that for the Diwali season, each subscription that we get, we are donating to 10 girls.
Okay.
So this way we are reaching out to a large number of audiences, even though we are just a startup and not established like any big corporate. I believe that if people today start putting in and subscribing to companies who actually work for a noble cause and they contribute their bit to it, we can create huge impact while also doing a business, running a business plus creating impact, not running an NGO, minting money, creating impact.
And using business profits towards helping society as well.
Yes.
Mr. Pai, at a time when you have, the giving pledge, for example, that a Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, etc., are so publicly a part of, and they don't shy away from talking about just how much of their wealth they're donating towards CSR activities, and how much of it they're giving away. Do you think we need more such examples of leading India Inc. members to come out and talk about what they're doing for CSR? Are you happy with what is being done now? Or how do you think that can possibly change?
No, I think we need more compassionate capitalism in this country. We have 65, 70 billionaires with $320 billion. I hope they spend at least 2% of whatever they have on CSR activities. And I'm veering down to the fact that in India, we need something like an inheritance tax to prevent such huge accumulation of wealth and to pass on to new generations. Because passing on wealth to generation creates a feudal country, which is not what we want as per our constitution. So it is time for all these people to come together and make sure they contribute, they demonstrate. And if they're able to demonstrate that they're doing good work, they're spending part of the wealth, they're giving back and publicly stand up, there'll be more respect for wealth creation. There'll be more respect for people who are successful. There'll be more respect for people who are transparent. Right now, many people don't want to talk about the wealth. They don't want to, give away money. They want to be chupke. They don't want to be in the public eye. They don't want to be held accountable. And all these things are not good for a growing economy because it creates a very perverse reaction to the creation of wealth. And then we have a large left in India which will come and say we want more taxes, government is giving away benefits, and it creates a bad political and social climate. So I think we need transparency like America, we need compassionate capitalism, we need to see impacts, and we want many of these people who are great wealth to give it away and not lead an ostentatious life too. So I think we need a change in attitude.
Sure. So since you've been so closely associated both with large corporates as well as now you work very closely with startups and entrepreneurs, maybe I can ask you to talk to our entrepreneurs and MSMEs about how they can incorporate CSR, not just as a means of communication or something that they want to do because it's a brand building exercise, but as something which is core to the business.
Well, I would suggest to all of them that they must see how to incorporate social impact into their business. How can they talk to people and say that whatever they're doing is good for society, they're changing the way society responds and they change the way society is impacted, and why they're very different. That gives them a natural edge, because every consumer wants to buy something or to do something which has a greater social impact because they're socially conscious. Second, they must adopt the best environment and technology standards into the business, so the entire business process and everything else is sustainable. They are not a drag on the environment, and they can clearly say that they have a model which works very well. And the third, they must ask their employees to participate because it makes them connected, it makes them feel happy, they give back, and all these things have a very big impact on everybody else. I think they must do that. And fourth, in public, they must talk about what they're doing, the impact they're bringing, because that creates a very positive impact on investors, on the general public, in the media interest. They can build their brand. So they can do many things at many places to make sure that social impact, sustainability, environmental policies become a large part of what they do, and they're a new age company, unlike the old age company which lived off the earth's resources, which gives back in a substantial way. And the value they create will be enormous, because how people look up to them, how people deal with them, and whether they are featured in the media, I think everything changes.
Okay. Yogita, Mr. Pai is talking about new age companies. And as an entrepreneur, what advice would you have for your fellow entrepreneurs when it comes to talking about the CSR that you do? Because, you know, social and online and digital has become such an integral part of what most entrepreneurs are doing today. How do you leverage that to talk about what work you're doing?
So, of course, when Mr. Pai said that branding and stuff, that is what happens ancillary to when you're doing a CSR activity. What's important is to know why you're doing it. Okay. If you have your why sorted, like we at Violet, we understand the problem, what women hygiene and periods is a taboo, and we understand we want to address to that problem. That is our why, and that's the reason for doing this one-for-one donation. So for each entrepreneur, whatever field you are working in, if you are doing some tech business, maybe you can sponsor some education for someone. So related to your field, if you can integrate something, like I said earlier, in your business model and not do something as a CSR activity, I'm sure it will definitely help for you to grow as well, plus create social impact also.
Okay. Pranav, how do you think, and how would you think that startups and entrepreneurs, especially startups at a time when the startup industry and the segment is really booming, how do you think that segment and that class of businesses can really be incorporated more as far as CSR is concerned?
Well, my point of view is slightly different. You know, I think putting myself in the shoes of a startup entrepreneur who has, you know, 1,000 things to take care of. So from his point of view, I would completely understand that, you know, CSR and social activities would be good to have, but not a must have, because he needs to obviously focus on building a sustainable business to begin with. Also, taking off from what Mr. Pai was saying, I would create a slight differentiation of social enterprises and non-social enterprises. So obviously social enterprises like the one which Yogita is running, of course, have a larger good which they are providing. But obviously there are a lot of non-social enterprises as well, which is where I would imagine 90% of you know, all the startups would fall in. And for them, I would look at CSR as a good to have, but not as a must have, at least in the initial formative stages of their business. Because like I said, that they have, you know, 1,000 things to take care of, and they may not necessarily be able to prioritize this over the others.
Pranav, I want to pick up on something that I found quite interesting in your report. Essentially, that 28% increase that we've seen in terms of CSR on the part of India Inc. Y on Y is also because of the fact that there are unused funds from last year that a lot of companies are taking and then trying to pass off as they spend for the current year. How do you think those loopholes or those, you know, those concerns or challenges can be addressed?
Yeah. In fact, as I was saying, that there is an inherent paradox itself which lies in the CSR Act. While it has been made mandatory, companies have been given the leeway that, look, if you're not able to spend it, you can simply give us a reason for the unspent amount and get away with it. And as a result of that, we've seen 1984 crores being unspent in financial year 2016. And in the previous year, it was 2,500 crores, which are huge sums, which have been, left as unspent amounts. And some reason has been given that, they were not able to identify the right project or the right organization to sort of, do the CSR activity. So that needs to be plugged. That gap needs to be plugged. And that can happen if there is a monitoring agency which is established, which sort of supervises the spends which are being made by the companies. So I think what is really required is this monitoring agency and also greater transparency in the disclosures. One of the things, which the Act prescribes are, the 9 heads under which companies can spend. But those heads have been very loosely defined. So towards education or towards healthcare. Now, a lot of things can be classified under education or healthcare or, gender equality. So I think another thing which is required is greater specificity in terms of what activities that companies should spend on and monitoring of that as well.
Mr. Pai, Pranav was talking about monitoring the spends and also talking about, the different heads under which CSR spends can be done, more specifics in terms of that and a closer monitoring of that. Do you think that's going to really defeat the purpose? And what, if you had one piece of advice to the government perhaps about how CSR should be done in India? Because I understand India is the only country in the world where it's made mandatory as far as CSR is concerned. If you had one piece of advice, what would it be?
I think mandatory CSR is wrong by nature. Business is not the job of business enterprises to do that, but be it as it may, government has done that. I wouldn't like any monitoring agency. I don't like with what Pranav is saying. I don't think it's right, because there'll be a bureaucracy, there'll be an inspector, there'll be bribe taking, there'll be all kind of things that is coming. We don't want that. Companies are disclosing. Some of them are spending. If they're not spending, they carry it forward. That's fine. It's okay. It's okay. Let them disclose it. Let them come. Over a period of time, things will sort themselves out. Is there misuse? Maybe a little bit of misuse. We can't throw the towel to everybody. I think we must trust and believe everybody in this country until they do wrong. And I don't think people are doing much wrong. So I think let's be very circumspect about it. We don't want government interference. We don't want anybody monitoring. Government can issue some guidelines which are very broad. So there's flexibility and not bind everybody like the Factories Act, CSR Act and all kind of things. I don't think we should go that way at all. And that is something that all industry should fight against. We don't want government control on this activity at all. Government has taken a decision, right or wrong, and now there is a broad outline. We can expand the number of heads, and that's perfectly okay.
Sure. All right, Mohandas Pai, Pranav Haldia, Yogita, thank you all very much. That's all we've managed to pack into the show on CSR and how you, the entrepreneur, can ensure that you're giving back to the societies you are involved in. Do remember, if you want your business to be featured on our show, you can write in to us at leadersoftomorrow@timesgroup.com. You can tweet at me personally. The Twitter handle is Sunanda_J. You can reach us on social media using the hashtag LOT or call us on that number you see on your screens. We promise to have all your queries answered. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.
If you feel you have what it takes to be awarded as the best in the business, here is your chance to apply. Head on over to our website, download the form and apply. If you face any troubles when applying or feel the need to get in touch with us directly, email us, call us, tweet at me directly at Sunanda_J or join our Facebook group.